Hello, I'm live. I am reading The Comedians. It's a novel by Greene. I've got a fly flying around here. It's a book about a journey of three men to Port-au-Prince in Haiti. They are the comedians. There's Mr. Smith, who is the presidential candidate, Mr. Jones, who calls himself Major Jones, and the story is told by Mr. Brown, who is the third comedian. They have now arrived in Port-au-Prince, and this is the beginning of the second part. Chapter 2, it's called. I was returning without much hope to a country of fear and frustration, and yet every familiar feature as the Medea drew in gave me a kind of happiness. The huge mass of Kenskov leaning over the town was as usual half in deep shadow. There was a glassy sparkle of late sun off to the new buildings near the port, which had been built for an international exhibition in so-called modern style. A stone Columbus watched us coming in. It was there Martha and I used to rendezvous at night until the curfew closed us in separate prisons. I in my hotel, she in her embassy, without even a telephone which worked to communicate by. She would sit in her husband's car in the dark and flash her headlights on at the sound of my Humber. I wondered whether in the last month, now that the curfew was over, she had chosen a different rendezvous, and I wondered with whom. That she had found a substitute, I had no doubt. No one banks on fidelity nowadays. I was lost in too many difficult thoughts to remember my fellow passengers. There was no message waiting for me from the British Embassy, so I assumed that at the moment all was well. At immigration and customs there was the habitual confusion. We were the only boat, and yet the shed was full porters, taxi drivers who hadn't had a fare in weeks, police, and the occasional Tonton Macoute in his black glasses and his soft hat, and beggars everywhere. They seeped through every chink like water in the rainy season. A man without legs sat under the customs counter like a rabbit in a hutch, miming in silence. A familiar figure forced his way towards me. As a rule, he haunted the airfield, and I had not expected to see him here. He was a journalist known to everyone as Petit Pierre, a métis in a country where the half-castes are the aristocrats waiting for the thumbrills to roll. I was believed by some to have connections with the Tontons, for how otherwise had he escaped a beating up or worse? And yet there were occasionally passages in his gossip column that showed an old satirical courage. Perhaps he depended on the police not to read between the lines. He seized me by the hands as if we were the oldest of friends and addressed me in English. "Why, Mr. Brown, Mr. Brown! How are you, Petit Pierre?" He giggled up at me, standing on his point-toed caps, for he was a tiny figure of a man. He was just as I had remembered him, hilarious. Even the time of day was humorous to him. He had the quick movements of a monkey, and he seemed to swing from wall to wall on ropes of laughter. I had always thought that when the time came, and surely it must one day come in this precarious, defiant livelihood, he would laugh at his executioner, as a Chinaman is supposed to do. "It's good to see you, Mr. Brown. How are the bright lights of Broadway? Marilyn Monroe, lots of bourbon, speakeasies?" He was a little out of date, for he had not been further than Kingston, Jamaica, in 30 years. "Give me your passport, Mr. Brown. Where are your luggage tickets?" He waved them above his head, pushing through the mob, arranging everything, for he knew everyone. Even the customs men allowed my baggage to pass unopened. He exchanged some words with the Tonton Macoute at the door, and by the time I emerged, he had found me a taxi. Sit down, Mr. Brown. Your luggage is just coming." "How are things here?" I asked. "All as usual, all quiet." "No curfew?" "Why should there be a curfew, Mr. Brown? The papers reported rebels in the north." "The papers? American papers? You don't believe what the American papers say, do you?" He leaned his head in at the taxi door and said with his odd hilarity, "You can't think how happy I am, Mr. Brown, to see you back." I almost believed him. "Why not? Don't I belong here?" "Of course you belong here, Mr. Brown. You're a true friend of Haiti." He giggled again. "All the same, many true friends have left us recently." He lowered his voice just a tone. "The government has been forced to take over some empty hotels." "Thanks for the warning. It would have been wrong to let the properties deteriorate." I kindly thought, "Who lives in them now?" He giggled. "Guests of the government." "Do they run to guests now?" "There was a Polish mission, but they went away rather soon. Here comes your luggage, Mr. Brown. Shall I get to the Trianon before the lights go out?" "Yes, if you go direct." "Where else should I go?" Petit-Pierre chuckled and said, "Let me come with you, Mr. Brown. There are roadblocks now between Port-au-Prince and Pentonville." "All right, get in. Anything to avoid trouble," I said. "What were you doing in New York, Mr. Brown?" I replied truthfully. I was trying to find someone to buy my hotel. "You had no luck?" "No luck at all." "No enterprise in such a great country?" "You expelled their military mission. You had the ambassador recalled. You can expect much confidence there. You can't expect much confidence there, can you? My God, I completely forgot. There's a French presidential candidate on board the boat." "A presidential candidate? I should have been warned." "Not a very successful one." "All the same, a presidential candidate. What does he come here for?" "He has an introduction to the Secretary for Social Welfare." "Dr. Philippot?" "But Dr. Philippot—" "Anything wrong?" "You know what politics are. It's the same in all countries." "Dr. Philippot is out?" "He has not been seen for a week. He said to be on holiday." Petit-Pierre touched the taxi driver's shoulder. "Stop, mon ami." He hadn't got as far yet as the Columbus statue, and the dark was rapidly falling. He said, "Mr. Brown, I think I had better go back and find him. You know how it is in your own country. One must avoid giving a false impression. It would not do for me to come to England carrying an introduction to Mr. Macmillan." He waved to me as he went away. "I will come up presently for a whiskey. I'm glad, so glad to see you back, Mr. Brown." And he departed with that air of euphoria based on nothing at all. We drove on. I asked the driver, he was probably a Tonton agent, "Shall we get to the Trianon before the lights go out?" He shrugged his shoulders. It was not his job to give away information. The lights were still burning in the exhibition building, used by the Secretary of State, and there was a Peugeot parked by the Columbus statue. Of course, there were a lot of Peugeots in Port-au-Prince, and I couldn't believe that she would be cruel enough or tasteless enough to choose the same rendezvous. All the same, I said to the driver, I'll get out here. Take my luggage up to the Trianon. Joseph will pay you. I could hardly have been less prudent. The colonel, in charge of the Tonton Macoute, would certainly know next morning exactly where I had left the taxi. The only precaution I took was to see that the man really drove away. I watched the tail lights until they were out of sight. Then I made my way towards Columbus and the parked car. I came up behind it and saw the CD number plate. It was Martha's car, and she was alone. I watched her for a while without being seen. It occurred to me that I could wait there a few yards away until I saw the man who came to meet her. Then she turned her head and stared at my direction. She knew that someone was watching her. She lowered the window half an inch and said sharply in French, as though I might be one of the innumerable beggars of the port, "Who are you? What do you want?" Then she turned on her headlights. "Oh God," she said, "so you've come back," in the kind of tone she might have used for a recurrent fever. She opened the door and I got in beside her. I could feel uncertainty and fear in her kiss. "Why have you come back?" she asked. "I suppose I missed you. Did you have to run away to discover that?" "I hoped that things might change if I went away." "Nothing has changed. What are you doing here? It's a better place than most to miss you in." "You weren't waiting for anyone." "No." She took one of my fingers and twisted it until it hurt. "I can be sage, you know, for a few months, except in dreams. I've been unfaithful in dreams." "I've been faithful too, in my way." "You needn't tell me now," she said, "what your way is. Just be quiet. Be here." I obeyed her. I was half happy, half miserable, because it was only too evident one thing hadn't changed, except that now, without my car, she would have to drive me back and run the risk of being seen near the Trianon. We wouldn't say good night beside Columbus. Even while I made love to her, I tested her. Surely she wouldn't have the nerve to take me if she were expecting another man at the rendezvous. And then I told myself that it wasn't a fair test. She had nerve for anything. It was no lack of nerve that tied her to her husband. She gave a cry which I remembered and stuck her hand over her mouth. Her body lost its tensenesses. She was like a tired child resting on my knees. She said, "I forgot to close the windows. We'd better get up to the Trianon before the lights go out. Have you found someone to buy the place?" "No. I'm glad." In the public park, the musical fountain stood black, waterless, unplaying. Electric globes winked out the nocturnal message, "Je suis le drapeau Haitien, uni et indivisibly Francois Duvalier." We passed the blackened beams of the house the Tontons had destroyed and mounted the hill towards Pétionville. Halfway up there was a roadblock. A man in a torn shirt and grey pair of trousers and an old soft hat which someone must have discarded in a dustbin came trailing his rifle by his muzzle to the floor. He could get us to get out and be searched. He told us to get out and be searched. "I'll get out," I said, "but the lady belongs to the diplomatic corps." "Darling, don't make a fuss," she said. "There are no such things as privileges now." She led the way to the roadside, putting her hands above her head and giving the militiamen a smile I hated. I said to him, "Don't you see the CD on the car?" "You can't see, you can't, you see," she said. "You can't see," she said, "that he can read?" He felt my hips and ran his hands up between my legs. Then he opened the boot of the car. It was not a practical search, and it was soon over. He cleared a passage through the barrier and let us go by. "I don't like you driving back alone," I said. "I lend you a boy, if I've got one left." And then, after I had driven half a mile further, I went back in my mind to the old suspicion. If a husband is notoriously blind to infidelity, I suppose a lover has the opposite fault. He sees it everywhere. "Tell me, what were you really doing, waiting by the statue?" "Don't be a fool tonight," she said. "I'm happy. I never wrote to you that I was coming back. It was a place to remember you in, that was all. It seems a coincidence that you just tonight. Do you suppose this was the only night I bothered to remember you?" she added. "Louise asked me once why I had stopped going out in the evening for gin rummy. Now the curfew had lifted. So next night I took the car as usual. I had no one to see and nothing to do, so I drove to that statue." "And Louis is content?" "He's always content." Suddenly around us, above us and below us, the lights went out. Only a glow remained around the harbour and the government buildings. "I hope Joseph has kept a bit of oil for my return," I said. "I hope he's wise as well as virgin." "Is he virgin?" "Well, he's chaste, since the Chonchon Makut kicked him around." We entered the steep drive lined with palm trees and bougainvilleas. I always wondered why the original owner had called the hotel the Trianon. No name could have been less suitable. The architecture of the hotel was neither classical in the 18th century manner nor luxurious in the 20th century fashion. With its towers and balconies and wooden fretwork decorations, it had the air at night of a Charles Adams house in a number of New Yorker. You expected a witch to open the door to you, or a maniac butler with a bar dangling from the chandelier behind him. But in the sunlight, or when the lights went on amongst the palms, it seemed fragile and period and pretty and absurd, an illustration from a book of fairy tales. I had grown to love the place, and I was glad in a way that I had found no purchaser. I believed that I could own it for a few more years. I would feel I had a home. Time was needed for a home, as time was needed to turn a mistress into a wife. Even the violent death of my partner had not seriously disturbed my possessive love. I would have remarked with Frère Laurent in the French version of Romeo and Juliet a sentence that I had reason to remember. Le remède au chaos, n'est-ce pas, dans ce chaos? The remedy had been in the success, which owed nothing to my partner. In the voices calling from the bathing pool, in the rattle of ice from the bar where Joseph made his famous rum punches, in the arrival of taxis from the town, in the hubbub of lunch on the veranda, and at night the drummer and the dancers with Baron Samedi, a grotesque figure in a ballet, stepping it delicately in his top hat under the lighted palms. I had known for a short time all of this. And I think I'll make a break here because it is a longer chapter, and it is Saturday, the 30th of August. Have a good Saturday.